at the point where we're going to finish up the tail either today or tomorrow. But one of the things that I always do every morning is I try to get a little reading time in on my Spitfire books, and I keep thinking about this as a potential paint job. This P40 type nose, the shark nose, whatever you call it. I have, well, it's one of the things I really would set this model apart from the other two. I'm always looking for ideas, and I just happened to come across this picture this morning. And I guess to really do this kind of work properly, you have to be inspired enough to do it. What you have to do is answer the phone. Again, if you ever try to get enmeshed in something like this and you do some of the research, it really is interesting, some of the things that they did with Spitfires in World War II and actually up into the 50s. Well, up until I had this book, I wasn't aware that a lot of the Spitfires, well, I don't know how many, it really doesn't say, but some of the Spitfires had invasion stripes and American markings. And it's not too far away to be thinking about the paint job already. It won't be long and we'll have this snapped into one piece. And I just love the whole 4 years that we've been doing Spitfires, we've collected an amazing library of material on them. There's really like an unlimited amount. I think the only plane that might have more paint jobs possible is the Mustang. The other thing we've been also thinking, because it's an early model, to do the early model type of roundels. The early ones had the wide yellow band, more like a bullseye. Just so that each one is just a little different. There's even Spitfires with German markings. Kind of neat though, kind of neat doing the research. We've done the real early ones with a 3-bladed prop, and since there's a very good possibility we'll be using a 3-bladed prop, this makes it even more scale. Anyway, enough inspiration, let's get down the shop, let's get some sandpaper going and get that tail sanded out. Start off the day with a little picture came in today's mail from Mike Chioda, and of course Merry Christmas, Happy New Year type of good wishes. And Mike, I hope we're going to get to see you next summer as a new expert. Anyway, he's putting all his planes have the lettering that he does the stenciling for. If you're looking to get any custom or fancy computer generated stenciling, Mike Chioda, he's out on Long Island, he's in the Pampa list. The end of the last tape, we blast this up. It's double blast in the middle. You can see that if you let it dry 24 hours, in this case it really just dried overnight, 24 hours is a little bit better. So we can get a brand new XL blade, trim the front. What I did, I wrapped the front around so that this would be a little stronger than normal. But I'll get a little sanding block now, razor off all these edges, and this will be ready to sand out. Now the key to sanding all this stuff, you don't want to sand it until all the shreds of the glass are disappear. And what we want to do, we're going to do some carbon matte on this tape too, so I want to get this as smooth as possible, but I'd like to leave enough of it on there that I've added some strength. It does no good if you sand this completely off. The same way when you're taking the resin off with the hairdryer, if you take all the resin off, well, you can't take it all off. You have to leave just a little bit on. You can see the little shiny spot. Better to leave a little bit on. You can always sand it right off. So let me get up a couple of sanding blocks and we get this whole thing started. So usually what you can do, you can trim most of it. I don't want to take a chance on taking a chunk out, but I can trim some of this off. Sometimes this just shreds up. I just try to get as much of it off as I can. And the rest, even if you don't get it off, the sanding block will take care of that. Now the idea is to get as smooth a transition from the glassed area into the no glassed area. That's why we let the epoxy go out onto the raw wood a couple of inches. It'll help in that transition. Okay, we just got our first shipment of real Cardinal kits in here. Oh yeah, this is the first one I've seen up close and personal. Mike's already bought it. Look at this. Nice picture. He'd be nice to have with photography. This is nice. The plans are in. List of stuff that should be in the kit. Beautiful. Take it out. I want to just lay it out on the table. We'll build it this afternoon.
Okay.
Is it going to take you a week to build this? Come on.
Look, it's all done already. All you gotta do is glue it together.
Yeah.
You don't even need a knife.
I like the way he does the drawings on the kit. This is really nice. Anyway, for any of the customers, my customers, I have these in stock. Same day ship out. Look at the wheel pants. Nice. This is good too, Mike. See, you got on the back. You know, the thrust line, that's what Sabatino's got. Sabatino's got his thrust line crooked. He put the motor in with, somebody drilled it out, I won't mention any names, with giant holes in the motor. The thing is sloppy as can be. Let's see, these are nice. Oh, yeah.
Look at this.
All right.
Excellent.
That is definitely good. The flaps cut. All right.
That's nice.
Yeah, this is the first one I've seen the whole kit in one piece like this. Get the landing gear. Get the hardware pack. Boy, those girls out at Brodak, they do a nice job of packaging everything. Readouts? Okay.
Got some sheeting, huh?
Yeah. Okay.
Not bad.
That's pretty decent. Let's see what the details look like. There we go. All right.
That's it.
And believe it or not, the Brodak Cardinals are in the playoffs. Nice kit, and we got them in stock for anybody looking for one in a hurry. We'll get it out to you the same day. The parts snap together in a matter of 6 minutes. Mike's ready to fly. Get the engine bolts. Ooh, that went together nice. Next time we see this kit, it'll be, what, Friday it'll be completely built?
Yep.
No problem.
No sweat.
No problem. Jamie, you already got a double store, so, man, you're ready to rock. I'm so impressed. How's the box cover look? Let me see the box cover.
Good.
Yeah, he did a nice job. This is his model. John built this.
Yep.
He did a nice job on that. Nice box. All right. John, you're okay. Another nice kit in his lineup of stuff. If you can get all the parts back in the box. Only one person can do that, the girls at Brodak.
I get it for free.
You can never shut the lid again. Once you take the parts out, they never go back in the box. We're going to make some shelves today. Mike's in a mood to make shelves. There's only one big problem with Brodak dope so far, and that is keeping it in stock. So we'll make up some shelves. We'll make a shelf here that we can stock a real nice big supply. Got these nice little sprues. And of course, master shelf maker, Mike Kajeski, Cardinal kit owner and master shelf man. They go in it there, or you need a bigger drill? I know you're going to have to make pilot holes. I could smell that drill burning.
Yeah.
All right, if you need a bigger drill, I got him. Oh yeah, he's smoking my drawers up.
Oh, shit. Only the best.
Smoking, man. That drill was red hot. You're burning up my drill. Now, luckily, we took the drawers out.
This is some...
When Mike missed on the first set of screws, the drawers were all screwed in place.
This is good Polish wood.
Oh, man. For the day, usually when you do a job like this, it takes 1/3 of the time to take those little white labels off. M600 takes them right off. Nice bullnose wood. This wood was $4 for a 6-foot sheet. I can't believe it.
Look at the one that Wendy picked out.
Oh!
Look at how straight.
Plus adjustable shelves for our extensive selection of Brodak dope. What, the whole table's going to probably tip over. Oh, I love that sound. Oh, come on. Push harder, push harder. We need a tune pipe contractor. You can't get the screws in. Ooh. That battery dead? After a careful analysis, we realized we bought too many brackets. All right, wait, let's rearrange this. Yeah, that'll work.
Now we get a bill.
Another nice little job. Oh. They seem like a small, insignificant thing, but because we work in a really confined area, having this stuff organized is really important. Anyway, back to work, back to sanding. I always put all these things on the video because a lot of people, one of the biggest problems, even Mike has constantly, is that people don't know how to get things organized so they can work in a very confined space. And if you look around, I don't have a lot of square footage, but every single piece of, everything is in drawers, everything is organized, well, to somewhat anyway. Kits that have been half under construction, parts for the planes that we're making, ribs that are made, everything is kind of organized here, and it's one of the things that I feel like you could get off the video if you, if you wanted to pick that up. Now what I try to do with this, Mike is going to be working on his cardinal wing and tail today, in the same time I'm working on this. So what we're trying to do is double up our efforts in the fact that we can both be doping, we can both be sanding at the same time. We can kind of help each other, and especially on little projects like the shelves. You'd be surprised how many people, if you would spend one day in their shop, you could organize it for them, make shelves, get the lighting right. It would just be so much more pleasant. Throw in an old TV, an old VCR. Usually those you can get real inexpensively or basically for free. And just having things organized when you work in a tight, confined space, really important. Now, the glass you can see, this is the test. It powders off. When it's powdering off, you're home free all. If it doesn't powder off, it means one of two things. Leave it up by a heating vent, let it dry more, let it cure, or that you've somehow gotten the ratio of hardener to resin wrong, or a last thing that it could be is the epoxy has a code. It could be out of code, and I've tried using up old stuff that's a year old. Any epoxy that's a year old, more than likely it's out of code because it was probably sitting on a hobby shop shelf or wherever you bought it for 6 months too. So any of these fiberglass deals, the best thing, fresh material will be a real cheap insurance policy. Important tip, whenever you make up, these are these little Bob Martin sanding blocks, put on a new piece of sticky back paper, press it down, but one of the things you always want to do is dress off the edge. That's where you can get, at this point in time, get a big gouge in the sanding. And I just have this whole box full of all of these things. Bob has sent me a bunch of them. Little blocks of hardwood, little handles on them. Just get rid of the corner and get rid of the edge. Otherwise you run the risk you're going to pick up a little piece of fiberglass or something in there. Use one block to dress it. Now I need a small one to get in around the hinges and the corners, around that little horn that I made. All of this sticky back paper. One roll of this will get you through 4 or 5 planes. And even though it's expensive, this is about $15 I think, it's so handy to have, and it comes in every year. All these woodworker supply catalogs that I have list this. Such good stuff. This alone will make your building a lot more fun. To get in this small angle here, I need to have a very small sanding block. Need to get right in that corner and edge. Again, the thing that's hard to do is get the transition between where it's hard and soft smooth. And one way to do that is if you find you've got a problem with getting the edge nice, is just harden the wood around the edge of the fiberglass with thin CA. Now I don't know if we're going to have to do that yet. I haven't tried to get down to the final sanding. But you always want to sand where the paper is over the fiberglass, not out over the wood. You want to be on the fiberglass basically and just having the edge of the sandpaper walk off to the edge. You don't want to be on the wood and then working your way up to the fiberglass, or you're going to get that divot in there. Now I remember a lot of times talking about things when I was learning how to do this, I would be so frustrated because I'd be in a rush to sand it out. It looks so ugly with that cloth on there. But what I would do is I'd get up the next day early and go down, and it would be soft and chewing gummy, and I'd be so frustrated by the end of the day. And if I just put it aside to dry, especially by a heating vent, the next day it sands like butter. It's no problem at all. I'll have a lip where you don't, it's very inconvenient to get that last little bit off. And what's good is to just take it off with a Dremel tool. Little spot here, what I did is I wrapped the fiberglass cloth right around here so that the cloth becomes part of this little horn that'll activate the wave rotor. Starting right now, another thing that I want to do every time I sand this and every time I work on the finish, I want to break the edge. I don't want to have any razor edges on here. Just carefully go around each part, making sure there's no razor edge. As soon as I'm done sanding this out, I'm going to start building up my substrate of Brodak dope. And I don't want to have a razor edge. A razor edge will always be a problem when you go to wipe the plane off. You wear the paint right off. You'd like to ideally have a radius on everything. No razor blades showing on the plane anywhere, especially on thin surfaces like this. I don't know if that little horn is going to be exactly what we want, but considering that was the only game in town, and the only thing we could invent along the way, I think it's going to be okay. You can see what these look like before you sand them, even where the glass overlaps. Let's see what we get a perspective on this. Remember, you want the sanding block to be on the glass 99% of the time, and just let it hang out over the edge. Do not sand from the wood to the glass. Sand from the glass to the wood. Powder it off. You can see I get 90% of it off in about a minute, minute and a half. Okay, well, Mike's here, and while we're waiting for, I gotta go outside and dope that tail. We're trying to work back and forth. One of the things, this is the first one you made, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is not the one we made in a jig.
No.
Okay. You want to take this one, just get these edges, kill that edge. And anywhere where the silk span is going to end, kill that edge. And that little sanding, that same little Bob Martin's block is good. The flaps came out real nice.
Yeah, I got a fiberglass these.
Yeah, but that's no problem. We'll do that. You want to fiberglass out like an inch on each side. Otherwise, you run the risk that you're going to get a crack there. The tails came out nice. Now, you made one built up and one sheeted? Is that what you did?
Yeah.
This looks beautiful. This has dope on it already or no dope?
Nothing.
Nothing. Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to show you before I...
Yeah. I would be thinking maybe you want to fiberglass the middle of this.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. How did you make that? Oh, you put a... Is this web in the middle, though? Did you web this in the middle?
Yes.
Okay, if it's webbed in the middle, you won't have to do that. That wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, that web is good. See the grain direction on that web? Yeah, this came out real nice. Okay, and this one is, you made a sheeted version, or is this a straight or what?
Sheeted.
Okay.
The ribs are in there, too.
Okay. Can you hold it up to the light and see the ribs?
Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah, I see. Now you can see the ribs in it. You hold it up to the light. Pretty cool. Okay, well, let's get the wing sand out. And then we could tissue that. By the time you get here for another half day off, we can tissue this wing up. And this will work out good because I need to finish sanding that. We'll get some clear on all these parts today.
Okay.
Before I go any further, I wanted to, before I even look at anything, you just take a look out at the weather. Now, you know for sure, you're not going to spray any clear today or any colored dope or anything, but it's raining. So I know before I even start, I want to do myself up a little test. I have the heat on in the house, and Karen's not here for the day, so I can kind of get away with a little bit of this, but I wouldn't be able to do a full spray or anything like that. But what I did, I put these on, and I'm looking to see if it's going to fog up. Now, if it does, it didn't fog up yet. I'm going to give it 15 minutes or so. I'm going to wait and see. If it fogs up, I'll put a little bit of retarder in there, but I like not to have retarder in there. And of course, the first coat, I made this extra thin. This is probably about 70%. You can see it's like water. And I'm using a squirrel hair brush. I want the first coat to be real thin because we're going to do Mike's wing and this at the same time, and let that wood grain really swell up and shrink down. I'll try to get 2 or 3 coats on this today, unless Mike poops out. Shelf King, the man of shelving. The things we're going to change on this tail, and it's only for my own, I'd like to run the sheeting out one more rib. This is the way some of the people make it, and I've made them this way in the past, but it makes a much stiffer tail if you run the sheeting out one extra rib. So I'm going to take this old sheeting off for Mike while he's working on a wing. Another thing too, you see how long these horn arms are? You can cut these in half. That's just going along for the ride. That's not doing anything. Minimal brass. If you have tubes, you don't need the horn arms that long. That's only if you're going to sink them into soft balsa wood. Okay, so that was step 1. Now I want to remove this sheeting here and get a new piece of sheeting. That part of that is the squirrel hair brush. And the big part of it is that the Brodak dope is just beautiful. Even in the rain, it's raining out there, believe me. Just put a little retarder in here and we're working away. Karen comes home, she is going to scream.
No, she's going to kick my butt. She's going to kick my butt.
Oh, man. So soon we'll have 2 or 3 coats on this. I don't know how many more coats we're going to get on today, but we'll finish out the day getting as many coats on as possible. That's working fine. The tail, time to get rid of this. Let's get a brand new blade on here. Just take that sheeting right off. One thing we can never accuse Mike of is being cheap with the glue. We're just going to get as much of this. This, I think, may enter into the realm of overkill, but because Mike has really put a lot of time and energy, we got 3 wings for this. How many wings you got? 3?
3.
Just makes me want to be sure that we get the best possible lifespan of everything here. Just a question now of stripping away what's left of this, get it right down to the ribs, and then I can get a little sanding block in there. Okay, that's all we're going to get done in this session. I like having that sheeting out, 1 extra rib. Good catch for Mike Kajeski. I'll get all the Brodak dope drying up, and it's time to end this session and say goodnight to all the nice plane ports. Come back tomorrow and work on that Brodak dope. Today I'm going to show you something that's, you're not even going to see this on National Geographic. I have to sneak up on my fish. Everybody knows that I have some sick fish in my fish tank. I have 2 fish that have tumors, and they basically float at the top of the water, but I hand feed them every night. This is something you have to see to believe. What happened, one of my fish now can't swim at all. He can just lay on the bottom. He's been chewing up all his scales from laying on the bottom in the stones. So I made him a pad out of sponge. Well, he swims off the pad. So what I did, I put a nice smooth stainless steel bowl in there so he would have a place where he wouldn't scratch himself up. And you can see he's in there. But now one of the healthy fish is in there too. I mean, I can't believe this. I called Karen at work to tell her. Look, see, one fish can swim. The brown one, Rusty, he can swim. The other guy can't swim. And we only keep him here. Now, there's a chance he'll get better. But the 2 guys at the top, I don't think they will get better. But because I love these guys and I hand feed them every night, I don't know. Now, there's a good chance. He better get better. I've got a lot of money tied up in medicine for these guys. But anyway, I can't believe it. Rusty, the other fish, I'm working on a computer before, and I look, and he swims into the bowl and keeps the other guy company. So maybe these fish really are more human than you think they are. You're never going to see that on National Geographic. The Bert and Ernie cards continue to grow. They even got a Christmas card this year from Glenn and Dawn Kaler. The Bert and Ernie collection. Hard to believe. Between crazy things happening around here, one of the things that I've done, last night I brought this in from the back room, put it up, you can see the heat is on now, it's blowing around there, to try to dry this up. And I want to try to get a little dust, a light coat of sanding on this, and see if I can lay out some carbon mat on here. Now I haven't used the mat in over a year, so I want to just redevelop my technique a little bit. Now I thought this was well worth. This is George Renner. He sent me some pictures, really well worth the little time. Look at they're in Bozeman, Montana. Look at the room they have. Can you imagine if you had this piece of property in Bergen County? You'd need, this would be a $5 million piece of property. This is John Gajewski, and the reason I mention is John has bought a couple of cardinal kits, and he's going to have George build them up for him. He promises to send us some photos. Well, it looks like this might be George's son, but look at the place they have to fly. I mean, if we had this in Bergen County, I could be national champion. Look at this. This is something you never see in Bergen County either. By the way, John Gajewski's the one that cuts all those really nice, straight, oversized motor mounts for me. People that don't know, he's a school teacher by trade, and he also has a business on the side. This guy is really something special. And I'd love to get down his shops. He makes custom fishing nets. And he used to be, this is a true story, President Carter's private guide when he went on fishing trips. Anyway, hey, nice to see that in the mail. We're going to try to get some of this carbon working right now if we can finish our coffee and get started. Okay, now John Brodak sent me some samples of two different kinds of mat. This is a while ago. This is carbon mat. And we had two different thicknesses. One was, I think, 004, and this is 002. Now, I needed a whole yard of this. I picked up a yard from George Spar. Boy, oh boy, this stuff, by the way, the little tape they give you with it, it tears it apart. Now, he marked this up as 2 ounce. In the catalog, it says 2.2. I guess that doesn't really matter. But now, in the past, now let's be real honest about this. In the past, I had some of this that was a sample from one of the suppliers, and what happened, I really wasn't happy about it. It didn't go around corners very well. However, from talking to Frank McMillan, I know Billy Werwich uses this, several other people, I really wanted to give it another try. Now, again, it's a carbon, they call it a carbon veil. It's really light, it's almost like silk span. And I really wanted to do a test for myself. See, I really wanted to find this out. If this was going to be stronger than, just as strong. And you know, the sad thing is now, I can't really tell by looking at this. This really is super light. If this is the same stuff, or if it's different, I guess we're going to find out. There's only one way to do anything. I'm going to try to do one of the little elevators, get an idea if this is going to be appropriate, and if I want to use this on the final, maybe use the rest of the yard up on the fuselage or whatever. But it's a unique material. Several people have had real good luck with it, Frank McMillan being one. And it's something I'd like to see if I can improvise, come up with some, maybe some good way of using it that we haven't thought of yet. I think this is the same stuff, and I don't want to speak for Randy, but Randy has used some kind of carbon as a substitute for the plywood doublers. I really don't know if this is the stuff. This is 2 ounce mat, but we're going to find out in about 10 minutes. I want to take the parts down, sand them all, get another final sanding on them, and get a little experiment done here. Remember, right, the first time, I think we did this on Jim Damerill's fund. I don't even remember now. One of the things I want to make sure is I'm not going over any rough surfaces, so I want to take a little sanding block, just make sure I have all the fuzz off of this. See, this is one of the problems with being old. You forget. I'd have to go back and look through about 300 videos to figure it out. But now, when I say a sanding, That's what I call a sanding. I'm just taking the fuzz off, and you can hear it just defuzzes. And what that does, it just gets off any little high spots, just powders off. And as always, especially after you leave Brodak dope dry up by a heating vent, holy mackerel, just powders right off. That would be an unfair test unless we had some other way of having two exact equal parts. But I know one of the things people have done is use nitrate dope to stick this down. I wouldn't, not going to even try that. But what I do know is the Brodak dope seems to stick silk span down a lot better than other brands. So this might be a good test for it just to see now. These are really nice and straight now too. These really, I cut these out of a separate block. I think we did that on a previous tape, but these really, this was really a special piece of wood. This really stayed nice and true. Little piece of this, and I probably haven't really figured this part of it out yet. I want to determine if it has more strength in one direction than another, and it doesn't seem to. In fact, to tell you the truth, it doesn't seem as strong as silk span. So I don't know. I wanted to see if there was any grain to this. There really isn't, though. I thought this would be a lot stronger. I think the stuff I tested a while back was the 4-ounce stuff, though. This is really super light. This is. I wanted to just take a piece and see if the grain in it just pulls apart. But again, once it's in suspension, the fiberglass cloth is the same way. I want to see if it rips the same way. Seems like it rips in all dimensions exactly the same. Okay, I guess we just do a test and we'll find out. This is the kind of stuff, if you don't do the test, and you just go out and, you know, you got to do a test. That's the only way to really know this stuff firsthand. See how this works. What to do is, for this test, is cut 4 pieces up, have them all ready, because the object is to go as quickly as possible, dope one side, dope the other side, get the other elevator. Just like silk spanning, I don't want to do one side and put it aside to dry, so. Again, one of the things that may be an advantage if I, you know, convince myself that this is the way I want to go, is the fact that the Brodak dope sticks so well, and I am never in a position where I like to use nitrate dope anywhere on the plane, so I'm just a nitrate bigot, I guess. Having had and having seen other people have terrible bad luck with this stuff. I would love to, and this plane especially will have nothing but Brodak dope and thinner on it, and there's a real positive reason for that, is I want to find out if somebody calls up and says, well, gee, I put Brodak dope under this and over this and around this and I moved in next door and something else, I don't want to hear about it. If you use the product from beginning to end, and when I do that, then I'm going to find out for sure if this is the way I want to do all my finishing. And what I've done with silk span, and again, I don't like to make a decision one way or another. It may be that once this is buried in paint, it's a lot different. Now, Frank McMillan told me one of the things he liked about it is up around the fillets, it didn't shrink. Well, one of the things with silk span is it gets its strength from the fact that it shrinks. So I don't know. Again, this is just one of these things where I really have to, I want to put plenty of dope on here. And I really have to rush because I want to get this outside drying. I don't like to be in the house doing any of this, especially if Karen is going to be home. And normally with, let's just see how this works. Normally with silk span, I can press the stuff right down through the grain. And I like to do that bare-handed, of course, just to develop a good bond. Well, it looks like it's passing right through whatever the carrier agent is for the veil. You know, when the next time we build a test plane, or profile or on somebody else's plane, I'll do one flap or one elevator of each way, and then I can really make a realistic comparison. But for right now, I don't want to run that risk on this plane since I've got so much time invested. I've got almost 2 years invested in this already. Now the trick is I want to get this flipped right over, even while this is soaking wet. Because I know what happens is, with silk span especially, one side starts to dry and it really gets to be a problem. So let me get a realistic test on this. Flip it right over. I have little blocks of wood just to hold it up off the table. Again, I'd really appreciate hearing from anybody that's had really good luck or mediocre luck, bad luck, no luck at all. And I'm pretty sure this is one of the products John Brodak's going to be carrying in the future, so it could be that we'll want to use more and more of this. So it would really be nice if you could get this with the strength all in one direction. You don't need strength in all these random directions. What you need is strength corner to corner. Again, we'll find out. I'm going to do this one piece. Give it a half hour or so to cook off, and then see if it's going to be something I want to use. Again, you should never be, let me get a paper towel, you should never be afraid to try any of this stuff, but the other side of that coin is you never want to be the person who you hear third or fourth hand through the grapevine that somebody did this, somebody did that, and you run off and ruin your good plane trying to replicate something, and then you find out it isn't really as good as people were telling you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. But there is one way to always find out, and that is just do the test. Now what I'm going to try to figure out here is what's the best way to cut the excess off. A lot of times you can just use a new blade. A lot of times it's better to just tear it. Oh, we'll find out. I've got this glued together in some way here. But anyway, that's step one in this little experiment that we're doing. Seems like it cuts real nice at the point at which it ends. In fact, I can cut both sides at once here. Now that's one of the differences between this and silk span, even though the strength doesn't seem a whole lot different. In fact, and again, I'm going to say this again, it doesn't even seem as strong as silk span, but maybe once it's confined in dope. See, fiberglass cloth is the same way. Alone, it's not strong. Needs to be confined in resin before it develops its real strength. So again, using this tail as a real-life experiment, I guess we'll find out. Now, I didn't try to wrap this around a hinge line because it didn't seem like it was happy going around that corner into the hinge line. And I figured if I had to, I'd just do a separate piece. Again, we're going to know more in a couple of days as we do the finish on this. Seems like this comes off relatively easily now. I want to try, I'm going to get a little sanding block. I want to try and see if this cuts the way, let's just try this for a random thing since we're in an experimental mode here. So you could also use this technique for getting it off, and this also gives you the radius on the corner at the same time. Again, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and you can pick a way that you're comfortable with. This actually is serving two purposes. By doing the cut this way, we get the radius, and you can actually see the radius coming in. Now this piece isn't going to fall off because it's stuck together with little drops of dope that went over the edge. This here, I don't think we're gonna have the same kind of look here. I don't want to take a chance on hitting that edge. You can see right here, at this point, it doesn't take much to make the carbon disappear, so one of the things we don't want to do is sand it now, because what we'll be doing is cutting all the little fibers. I want to get that buried in dope, maybe 2 or 3 more coats before I do any real sanding. Okay, so there's 2 ways to trim the excess off of this that both work very well. This method seems to be working just fine. I would save all the little scraps too for reinforcing if you want to reinforce something. I really have to go through 2 of these parts. I'm going to go back to the one I cut with the razor because I like the idea that I get that nice radius edge by using a little sanding block. So that may be something worth its weight. Now, I thought of just hitting this with some sandpaper, but I'm afraid because I see how thin and delicate this is right now, and you can just take the carbon right off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay out 1 more coat of clear on this and then set it aside out in the garage to dry for a while before I even think about hitting this with sandpaper. This really seems like it serves 2 purposes here. It really works relatively well, in fact. But it's eerie the first time you use this because it really is a little different, It's a lot different than silk span. And I'm an old silk span guy. I know just how much strength that silk span adds, and you just tissue that I-beam wing, put the first couple of coats of dope on there, and you're amazed how tight that becomes. Okay, now, what I did, I want to get a couple of coats on this. You can see it really looks, it's a little strange looking, like it's soaking in, but I guess it is soaking in. It's a little eerie working with this the first time you work with it, but hey, like anything else, I need to develop a little confidence and technique, and we'll know by the end of this, I hope. Now, I always think to myself, too, what's the worst that can happen here is if I don't like the way this works, or if it comes out too heavy, the worst that can happen is I'll sand it right off or take it off with lacquer thinners. And see, when I put the penetrating dope in there, it seems like it wrinkles up a little bit. Keep in mind though, this clear has a little bit of retarder in it. You can see how it wrinkles up now. Let's see if the wrinkles go away when it dries. And what I'm doing is, as I see the wrinkles coming up, I'm pushing the dope down through them. Okay, we'll find out as the dope softens up the coat below it. The silk span doesn't really do this, so I don't know. I don't know if this is related to this. See, it's up over here. You can press it down with your bare hands, in fact. But this would be a good time. Yeah, it seems like it's sitting right back down. Again, you always have a little bit of a learning curve when there's a wrinkle right here. See this wrinkle? And what's happening, it's softening the dope, and it's pulling. Again, we're going to try this. Just keep pressing it down, pressing it down. And see, here's where that wrinkle was. Just get a little more dope on top of it. Now we'll see how this looks when it dries. Okay, now the first coat has dried, and I've got all the bubbles that were on here all went right back down. Now, I have a theory, again, I don't know if this is correct, that what's happening is if you look at this up really close, these strands go in microscopic directions, and what's happening, the dope is shrinking them as the dope does its normal shrink routine, so that when you wet the dope, they kind of expand and you get these places where it looks ugly. But I don't know how many coats. Now, I'm going to put another coat on this. Again, I know other people have had real good success using this, so I don't want to give up. And it's certainly one thing nice. It doesn't seem to warp or twist. These would be very thin, delicate structures, by the way. It seems like there'd be possibly some, look at how straight that is, possibly some advantage there. But I'm trying to, keep in mind what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do this as if it was the person watching the tape, trying the little experiments for the first time, see what goes wrong, what works, what doesn't work, why does it work. And what I'm going to do now is just dust coat this. And when I say dust coat, a lot of people don't really, let me get a piece of paper. Take some 320 or 400 paper and just dust it. And I don't mean sand it, I mean just this. Just get the fuzz off. And actually, this is too soon to do it. I'm going to put one more coat on because I can feel it. I'm taking, see, I don't want to take carbon off. I just want to sand it. Well, let's do one. That's the worst that can happen. I'll recover it if I go through. Again, I know, frankly, no one has had really good luck doing yours and probably plenty of other people that I'm sure they went through. But the thing that, if you put this down with nitrate dope, that scares me. I always worry about the nitrate dope coming back up through the finish. And I will eventually try this with epoxy. I think this would be a typical candidate for, instead of using glass cloth, now see, we're getting into the carbon there. That's too much. Just a dusting like that. And give this another coat. And see, probably this is going to take 2 to 3 coats of dope before I can sand it and get that edge that I want, and yet not be picking up the carbon. Because let's face the fact, if you pick up the carbon, you're defeating the whole. You're cutting all the strands. You're kind of defeating the purpose of it. Again, we're going to learn as we go. So share the adventure with us. This is the whole essence of modeling. When you have a new product, a new material, a new something, and you're learning as you go. It's, to me, if it wasn't for this, there wouldn't be much point in doing this at all. Now, what's amazing here, got a little amazing story is, because Karen is not in the house today, we're able to put the stuff up by the heating vent. We're looking at about 20 minutes between coats by a heating vent. And this stuff is powdering off. Again, now I've gone to the block after 2 coats, and what I'm trying to do, I'm just picking up the high spots. So it seems like it's laid down amazingly well. And it lets me get back and do that edge. Again, this is an educational thing, and I hope by the end of, well, some amount of time, I'll have figured some shortcuts and some tricks and tips and whatever. But follow along. This is how it goes in the real world. This is if you work for General Motors, this is how they would test stuff. Doesn't matter, Boeing, they have to test stuff. You have to always make the evaluation, what's going to be the best. Now, with the block, you can see this is already, trying to get an angle with a lighter focus off it. It's already flattened right out. And a lot of my skepticism that I had the other day is gone away. But it needs at least 2 and maybe 3 coats of dope before you can block things. See, now there's a high spot starting to come through. I don't want to sand and go right through, so I'll give this a 3rd coat, and then we'll look at it maybe an hour or so from now. But if you have a heating vent in your house, wow, and you don't have a problem with the smell in the house, which I only have if Karen's going to be here. By the way, I found another way of, if somebody in your family objects to the smell, if they don't like this, well, they don't like the smell of anything around here. Here's one of the things. You can buy from the Yankee Candle Company a candle that takes a lot of the odor out, and we have one. It's a candle that takes the odor of almost anything out of the house, even dampness or mildew or whatever. And I also picked up, it's kind of a, I don't know if this really works, I've only had it one day. It's a bag of rocks that are treated with chemical that are supposed to take some of the odor out of the house also. So again, we'll try that. At least try everything. Okay, even with the block, boy, now with 2 coats, with a 3rd coat, that's going to sand out real nice. That really is the hot ticket here. And the nice thing, if we were using other materials, it would be a day between coats or 12 hours or something crazy. Because it's 20 minutes to an hour between coats, we're just going right through this like a chainsaw.
Well, no.
Yeah, all right. See, this is the candle. Because Karen doesn't like any smell in the house. I leave this burning all day long. It's a scented candle. It's made by Yankee Candle. By the way, check this out. I got this bird feeder deal going on here. Oh, I got a grackle up there. Look at these hogs. I wonder if these birds know I'm watching them. Between the fishing bowls and birds up here, I feel like I'm working at animal habitat. Look at that guy's nasty. They're fighting already. Look at these guys. Unbelievable. Anyway, this may be a tip you can use. And I put all this stuff on this. This is one of the ways Karen and I have to deal with this. I leave the door open downstairs, so believe me, it's cold down there. But just having this really makes it very practical. And maybe you'll even just like the smell of this when you're not doing any kind of hobby work. Now, this Brodak dope dries up so nice, it's unbelievable. Anyway, we're about another hour from the last coat, and needless to say, it's ready to sand, and this is the part of it that you really start to make up time on your finishing, and you don't have to give it that overnight dry, and it powders off at the same time. Now, I had one problem that surfaced in the last, since the last coat, is when I went to put on about coat 3, I think there's 4 coats on here already. One of the coats all of a sudden had a zillion little fish eyes in it. It looked like little fish eyes, so I put some fish eye killer in the dope, and this is the first time since using Brodak dope, except for fixing Streg, I had to put a little bit of fish eye killer in there. So I assume, well, that helped. It wasn't perfect, but we'll see if we get that same fish eye problem back in here. Now see, right now we're starting to bury the carbon itself in the dope. What you see coming off is mostly dope and very little carbon. Now I know they did a test in Stunt News. If you haven't seen it, somebody did a test of the strength, and carbon was not as strong as the soap span. So I don't really want to make a decision here until I finish this tail. Then I'll make my own educated decision. But really, everybody, that's the kind of stuff you have to do on your own. Now, it definitely does add some strength, no question about that. But how much we're adding in total finish here, I don't know. The only real way to test this would be to do 2 equal pieces of wood, 2 flaps that start out equal as wood and wind up in the buffed out finish. And then you could compare the strength and how much material it took. Well, we're not really going to be able to do that now, but as you get more and more dope on it, it definitely gets easier and easier to sand. That's my feeling. You can see now, less than an hour and we're powdering off dope already. So that's the significant gain here is in the quality of the dope, and we're already starting to get a little bit of reflective light on here. I think 1 or 2 more coats and we'll have it. Last coat was dry, and I got these props from Dennis Toth. This is his new reflex airfoil prop. I don't know if you can see it, but there's let's see if we can angle the light on it. Right here, there's a reflex in the airfoil, and he's flown, right here is the airfoil, the reflex. Now, these are rough. Dennis, he made these with my toe, by the way. I got to give him another roll of toe. Anyway, these are for our GMA jet testing program, and this is the way props look when you get them from Dennis. Anyway, Tom Hampshire's been using some of Dennis's props. I've been using them. And these I look forward to if we ever get any flying weather. Dennis also sent, we'll not be working on it, I'm just filling this in while we're waiting for that dope to dry. And by the way, buy a heating vent. I've only been waiting less than an hour per coat. So you can probably reasonably go from raw wood right up to silver, and assuming it's 70, 80 degrees out. Anyway, let me shut the light off here and get a look at. This is a book Dennis sent me. Now, Dennis is making a P51. He's going to try to use the same P51 paint job that, one of them that's in this book. The only problem is I forgot which one he's going to use. He was here before. Anyway, Good old Dago Red. Anyway, good old phone call. Another happy, satisfied Brodak Dope customer. Anyway, since doing this Brodak Dope, it's been a real pleasure, and it's nice to see so many people having a real success with it. Anyway, anybody knows the Rare Bear, just a quick look at this book. This is one of the ones, anybody looking for a new paint job, anybody looking for some inspiration, anybody knows how much inspiration I need in the morning. This book is one of the ones just loaded with nice stuff. One really nice picture after another. And by the way, another thing, now we've been waiting 20 minutes maybe even with it when the heat goes on, between putting coats of dope and sanding it. This stuff is sandable after 20 minutes. And just think what that does to cutting your finishing time down. And I really need to hear from some of the people like in Florida, where it's warmer out. Look at this. I'm telling you, if you don't get any inspiration to go build a model after you read this book, you really have to just quit while you're ahead. And there's Strager right there. Now imagine, just imagine. You could take this guy and just pull him and throw him in the weeds. Put me up there. The original Tsunami, the original blue and silver paint job. Well, and I'll tell you, if one of the things you need is when you get up in the morning, you really are tired and you're not inspired to go build, get yourself some nice World War II books, Warbird books. Such a big help. Well, while you're waiting for coats of Brodak Dope to dry. Now, this is the rarest of rare things, is to see Spitfires right next to Reno air racers. But they don't generally like using these. The British consider the Spitfire almost like a religious thing. They don't use them for air. Look at his phone. I don't believe this. Another Reno air race person. Now, one of the models that you almost never see as a semi-scale model. Look at this. Oh, what a paint job, too. A lot of people don't know John Sandberg, the original Reno air racer he had was, that he campaigned, was a 63. A nice picture of Billy Woolridge and Dan Banjock flying it off. Look at this. Oh, man. Anyway, nice way to spend the time while dope is drying. Super Corsair's motive power, the Pratt & Whitney R4360 that was rebuilt for the plane by John Sandberg JRS shop, is seen after first engine runs during August 1982. John Sandberg did the engine on the Super Corsair. Look at this exhaust, where the exhaust comes out, the airflow. Oh, man. Makes you want to drink Budweiser Light. Now, this gives you an idea what that exhaust looks like. Just check that out for a minute. Look at that. Super Corsair. Banjock, I know if you're watching this, I know you got to be thinking, oh, Kevin Eldridge. A nice picture of critical mass. And yeah, like I said, there's just no end to them. Beautiful ideas for paint jobs, things you can use on any stunt ship. There's the Jet 50 and the Sea Fury. Wright R3350. Check out the 5-bladed prop. Not crazy about this paint job. This looks like one of Jimmy Casale's stunt ships. Looking for a nice unusual name for your plane, Furious. It's a Sea Fury, of course. Anyway, I just love the books. I love the wing shape on a Sea Fury too, almost elliptical like a Spitfire. Dreadnought. Look at that wing shape, how nice that wing shape is. Nice camo job on that one. Rare Bear. Oh, always one of the top seeds. Just check the height of the landing gear out here. Look at that prop. Carbon aluminum. Just thinking of something funny here. If anybody hasn't seen it, Lyle Sheldon used to complain that it got too hot in the cockpit. I forget what they did. They put an umbrella on top of them. Anyway, one of the things cool, if you've never seen the movie B-29 Frozen in Time, Lyle Sheldon trying to rescue the Keybird out of, Newfoundland. Anyway, I have that on tape too. Anybody'd like to borrow it. Now, I know myself, I'm always looking for new ideas, new inspiration for a stunt ship. I don't know how you could not get some inspiration from some of these paint jobs, some of these really neat-looking ships. This book is a must-have. Checking to see if there's any castor oil in that Power Master fuel. Look at the landing gear. I always love the landing gear on a Bearcat. Beautiful photography in this book. Howard Pardue's Bearcat bred virtually every Reno Air Race. Look at all the Mustangs in the back. Manjocks pulling up to the pits. Look about an unusual paint job for a Bearcat. Look at that. Look at canopies on some. How funny they look with that tiny canopy. Looks like they used an 11-inch SIG canopy on this plane. These are all pictures of the rare bear at one time or another. Purple prop tips. Just look at that. One of the true legends of Reno, the rare bear. This is one of the ones I like with contra-rotating props. Check the prop out, the 6-blade contra-rotating. One of my all-time personal favorites, the Red Baron. Notice the contra-rotating props on this too. This is the third of 3 paint jobs that this plane had, the Michelob paint job. Early model Mustang. Talk about a paint job. Usually would like this one. Just go into it. You just never get sick of looking at these books. Checkerboard rudder, another nice tip. Something you can put on any stunt ship, a checkerboard rudder like that. Dress it up. Invasion stripes. Oh man, do they look good in flight. Now here's something you don't see very often. A Mustang with swept wings and tail. Picture of the all-aluminum whiskey business. The Huntress 3. That's what's here. He's pointing out all his paint jobs. He never told me the one he likes. He did, but I forgot. That's the truth. Low canopies. This would be nice to model too. Just imagine this on, on a regular stunt ship. This real low cockpit with the pylon in the back. Cut down scoop. And of course Kent Ticer's already made a model of Dago Red. I believe Bob Whiteley did too, I'm not sure. Number 4. And just check out the wingtips on this guy. Oh, the other magazines, we have a bunch of pictures of the color tile Mustang. Anyway, that dope should be about dry by now. Great book. I recommend it to everybody. If you don't like Mustangs, my God, there's Strager right there. Even if you don't have any love of Mustangs, you will get ideas. You will be able to upgrade your modeling dreams, thoughts. Good old Strager. Just a great book. All right, back to the dope, the shop. Let's get another coat on that guy. Now, see, on a coat before this, the fish eyes were coming right up. Now I see I still have a little bit in here, and what I suspect the reason is, I have a theory, that the carrier that this carbon is in, I don't really know, of course, but I suspect the carrier that this carbon is in has some kind of a base that doesn't like to adhere to the finish. And I don't know if that's been a problem other people have experienced or not. But here's the trick with the matte, the carbon, is go back over it and press down on the brush. Press it right. You don't have sanding strokes. You don't have, with this material, you don't have brush strokes. Look at, I got a hair out of this already. Come on, baby, get that hair out if you can take it right now. Anyway, you don't typically have brush strokes. You'll notice this flows right out. And if you're going to flow a coat of this on, flow a coat on, don't play. And just keep going back and forth. This is how I've managed to push that dope right down through the carbon. And you'll notice in a very short time, you see right now the brush strokes are going right out of it. I've detailed this in the original Brodak dope video to flow a coat on, and that's what I mean right there is a coat. Now see, this piece for some reason looks like it's having a lot more fish eyes, and I've already got fish eye killer in it, so what I'm doing to get rid of this is just keep brushing back and forth. Drag the brush over it back and forth, and eventually you'll get them almost all to go away. Put the brush strokes in different directions.
Every day after that, I went to the beach.
You can get rid of most of them this way. Now, as rough as that looks, that's going to lay right down in the final finish. And again, on this piece, I've had exactly the same thing happen. You see the fish eyes? Now, I'm assuming, again, I'm going to repeat this because maybe somebody's going to give me a clue here. If that is the carrier agent, don't forget this carbon is confined in a carrier agent. And maybe I've had some carbon that's had tissue holding it together, little strips of tissue that's been a problem. See those little fish eyes? Those little tiny fish eyes will make you crazy. Now, even though this has fish eye killer in it, you would think, this is the first time I've ever experienced this level of fish eye stuff, so I have to assume it's in the carbon, it's in the carrier. And look out at the end here. But one of the things you have, the choice you have with Brodak dope that you don't have with other materials, is just keep brushing and pushing it on, pushing it down into the grain. You don't have to worry about those unsightly brush marks when you're done. That's the beautiful part. Even though, now if you just go and do this back and forth, even dip your brush in a little thinner if you have to, eventually you'll get them. This is one of the things I know I'm going to hear about. Oh, there are little fish eyes in it. And you can just keep going over them. What in effect you're doing is just burying them. Now, we'll do a little research. I'll talk to George Spohr and see if he knows about these fish eyes. Maybe Frank McMillan can give me a little tip on this. He's done this before. And Frank's always willing to spend a little phone time with you too, so it's good. Again, the only way I've been able to deal with this so far is just keep going back and forth as it's starting to dry, because then it bridges the little gap. Now, it was the worst on the first coat, and it got better with each coat, so I have to, again, I just have to assume that eventually I'm going to get them to go away. Looks like we got them now. Now this is day 2 of sanding out this clear, and I'm real curious how this is going to work. I'm getting more curious as the day goes by. It seems to stiffen up as the dope dries out, but what's happening, the carbon isn't stiffening up, the dope is adding that strength. So again, it's a little bit of a mystery here, and I want to go through with the whole test, and before I make any decision one way or another, you can see I've got just the slightest little shine on it now. I'm going to really be before I put any silver on. Really do a detail sanding now. Take my time. Really just start in any area. 320, detail it out, and maybe get one more coat on here. Again, it just powders right off, so it makes it real easy. You can see we're starting to build up just that little bit of gloss, and I'm not sanding down through, I'm just getting the fuzz off of this. Whole thing is to get the fuzz off. Interesting part of this, to me, is there is not one brush mark. This is all brush. Not one brush mark anywhere on here that I have to deal with at all. You see, as I go through this, I'm trying to think of little ways I possibly, if we were doing a curved surface, I'd know more. But again, on flat surfaces like this, it seems like you really have to deal with that problem that seems to be coming from the binder and the carbon of pressing it down. So maybe that's why the original guys that were using this were trying to use nitrate dope, I don't know. But it seems like at this point in time, now this is dried, and it sands out beautifully, very easily. That's part of this is that the dope itself is what's making this easy to work with, and we're starting to get that little bit of shine. And once we have that, we could start thinking about our first coat of either filler, or I was thinking about taking some silver and just putting a little bit of talcum powder in it. That's another choice. Again, I'm going to sand this all out off camera, and then decide if I want to give this a shot of some kind of silver filler or just regular silver or what. Or maybe even one more coat of clear, get a little more gloss on it than that. Again, once I sand it out, I'll know. But the thing that's nice is this is not a tedious sand out. That's a real, but sometimes you sand it out and you have piles of sandpaper with chewing gum on it. This is kind of like just a fuzz it off kind of operation. Now I have to sand it away here, and I sanded this out with M600 just to see if I was going to be able to see a little shine yet or a gloss or what. And I think what really needs to happen here, this material doesn't bridge the gap, at least on these parts, doesn't bridge the gap in the grain as well as Silkspan does. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix up a little bit of Brodax silver with a little bit of talcum powder just to make up a real light filler and see if I can fill some of this grain. I don't want to just keep putting coats of clear on. I want to see if one or two coats will fill this grain. Now normally when you do Silkspan on these, so you don't get any of this little graining stuff. So I don't know where the gain or loss is. And like I said, I expected in the beginning of this to have a little bit of a learning curve, but it seems like right now, if I was at this point with Silkspan, I'd already be finished. But I don't know. Again, the parts seem relatively rigid, but I don't know if we're gaining here, and I hope I'm not discouraging people from trying this. Needless to say, you should try it yourself, but it seems like this is more work in terms of sanding and cleaning it up than with Silkspan, and I just don't know if it's a gain yet. And these little things like the grain here, if you can candle it, normally Silkspan just goes right over that. So I'm going to mix up the filler and spray this on and see what happens. Alright, I'm just going to make a little test batch of silver up here. Again, I only need to really give this one or two coats. Just a little bit of talcum with the silver. Thin it out, shake it up real good. Oh, life is rough here in Montana. Look at that ice. That's solid ice. All you guys in warm weather climates. Look at this guy go. Why don't you put the lights on? Save electricity. We'll be rich. Yeah, put it on nice and thin. Mike said, yeah, I got a coat of silver on this. This certainly didn't dry. I know that. I don't even have to look at it. It's up there by the... Oh, it's cold out here. This stuff takes a long time to dry in the cold. All right, how's that coming? Now what we did is we're trying to get this ready for tissuing. A lot of times it's easy if you just hang it by the lead outs, Mike. You know, when you go to get that last part, just hang it by the lid. This stuff goes on nice though, doesn't it? Just try not to get any runs, then you don't have anything to sand in the next coat. This will be ready for tissue. Man, that's solid ice out. The fish pond is solid ice. Holy mackerel.
It's nice out.
Living in Montana with the real men.
Nice.
And we work barefoot out here too. Woo. Yeah, Even my work, I didn't want to put these shoes on this morning. It was so cold. I put my other shoes on. Oh, yeah. Now, you get one coat on, let it dry, come back down inside for 10-15 minutes and get the second. You got time for 2 coats today?
Yeah, we'll have to.
Okay, get two thin coats is always better than 1 coat.
Yeah, we'll have to squeeze it in.
Well, to show you what guys we are, Mike's brought this portable heater over here, except we're too lazy to start it. Yeah, we've been working downstairs most of the day. Anyway, the silver's back there drying up. We'll see what that looks like tomorrow. Take a look at this. Keep that wing going, baby. Cardinals forever. Now we got a nice set of pictures here while we're waiting for that silver to dry and waiting for Mike to freeze to death out there. This is a Pat Johnson Bearcat here. I don't know if people have ever seen it. Pat Johnson is the one that makes all my plan copies for me. Did a lot of the drawings for Strega and Tsunami. Now his friend, this is his friend's ship, Jim Welch. Jim Welch brought a set of cardinal ribs and kind of improvised up, made like his own version of the Cardinal here. It looks real nice. It's got a Tom Lay Super Tiger 60, and he's very excited about how well it flies. He said he used all 4 to 6 pound balsa, used carbon on the fuselage, and had trouble holding it down. Welcome to the club. Hey man, I'm wrestling with it too. It looks like we finally got it to stay down. He said it's not easy to use on confound curves, doesn't want to stay down. Next time I'll use it, I'll try epoxy. Well, we're going to try some other stuff too. We're not going to give up yet, that's for sure. Anyway, notice the Bearcat. This is a Pat Johnson deal. Anybody knows how I like warbirds. Oh man, this looks like a good one. Well, I don't really know, Pat. I don't have a set of plans. I'm going to try to get a set for this. This looks like it's a 675-inch rings, a square-inch ring. And knowing Pat, it's probably a real accurate set of plans to work with. Anyway, we never get sick of looking at warbirds, that's for sure. So anyway, I will, of course, pass these on to Tom Morris. Here's the last one here, and this is a picture of Jim himself. Jim, if you knew how cold, he lives in Idaho, if you knew how cold it was here, my hands are still shaking from being out in that garage, tripping on the ice. Anyway, appreciate the pictures, and hey, keep sending those pictures in. I love those semi-scale planes, and we'll get them all on the video for you. Now, I wanted to look at what the silver filler coat was going to look like once I got a little light sanding on it. I'm wet sanding it, of course. With 600, either 600 or 500, I don't know. We had a piece of this paper. I just wanted to see if it would cut. For sanding the talc, it's better to use 500 or 600, not 1200. It cuts it a lot better. Cuts very quickly, in fact. I've been doing around the detailing around the hinges. But just to give you an idea of how this cuts, I always spray the sandpaper too. Again, the silver talc filler method. We used this on 3 or 4 other planes already with real good results, but never, of course, with Brodak Dope. This is the first one. The silver helps show the mistakes, and what it also does, and let me just show this for you, this is really significant. The whole trick with wet sanding, you got to keep it wet. Once it's not slobbering and fooling in there, you're just wasting your time. Okay, now you can see, keep that liquid flowing in there. Here's the thing about doing any wet sanding. Let's just do a quick little spot. You can see when you're going through. That's what the silver buys you. This is the whole trick to getting these museum finishes. You got to know when you're going through. And I'm just guessing that's about how much you'd want to leave on there. You get the silver showing you all the imperfections. You don't want to take it all off, or you've wasted your time. You just want to take as much as you need. And this is one of the things that's always easy to do these parts in your bare hand. It's always much easier, much quicker. But again, if you just follow the simple rule, 500 or 600 wet paper, M600, keep it wet. Don't go through. As soon as you see anything like the black coming up or the white on the wood, keep it wet. That's the whole trick. And this really works good if you're working with a helper and you get him to do the spritzing as you're sanding. You can see it's not a big deal to get the whole thing sanded out. And it's real easy to know when you're going through. Now from this point on, we're going to take the silver out of the gun and just put on a coat of normal silver, thin 60-40, Brodak thinner. And these parts will be ready to install. We'll be ready to get on with this project. Now as much trouble as I've had, I know trouble I guess is not the right word, just extra work of doing the carbon, I don't really know. I'm not going to make a decision on this until the model's finished, but certainly it's doable. At least we've gotten that much out of the way. Whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, I think is really going to ultimately be in the eye of the beholder, but at least we know we have choices now. Now again, a whole trick with everything. Every part of this hinges on keeping the wet area wet with M600 or some equivalent material. We like the M600 because it evaporates so quickly. But if you did have a helper, you could figure some way of letting this stuff drip out of the ceiling. Just the idea of keeping it wet. It cuts the best when it's wet. That's the whole secret to getting this done in a hurry. A lot of people, they dread sanding out the filler. Oh, it's long and tedious. Well, it is if you dry sand it, but if you can wet sand the silver, first off, the silver is going to show you all the mistakes, and that's a key part of this. You develop a little feel or a little technique. Doesn't matter if you go back and forth or in a circular pattern, but it's really, really important to get all the filler up. The filler is a heavy material. We'd like to just wind up with just the filler in the low spots when we're all done with this. And it looks like the wet is holding, even though we've had snow. The weather is holding, so we'll be able to get a coat of silver on this. You can see how quickly, let me show us, how quickly that cuts right down, and boy, all the bad spots that you normally wouldn't see come right to the surface. Doesn't take long. Now, the next thing is to take the silver filler out of the gun, flush the gun with thinner. I want to make sure, and I'll mix up a brand new batch, I want to make sure I'll put all that filler in one can that I've used, because I can use that on the fuselage, I can even use that to brush on. And I want to make up a brand new batch, about 60% thinner, and get a coat of silver on this today before it gets dark outside. Whenever this thing is ready to be cleaned, I'll wait till Karen's doing some laundry, throw it right in the laundry, takes it right out. Famous last words. Seriously, having this foam pad to work on, I always like to show that. A lot of people miss out on, they just don't know how to make a pad that's, we have an old blanket, one of these old egg crate pads, which are about $10, you can cover the whole table. Piece of carpeting works good. I've seen several guys, but have a nice soft pad to say from this point in the plane's life on, it's going to be susceptible to getting dings. So that's an idea worth its weight in gold right there. You also apologize. In one of the earlier videos, I mentioned, George brought this to my attention. I was calling the fuel Power Blast by mistake. I guess the guys at the field were teasing me or whatever. Anyway, George caught it on the video. It is Power Master. Power Master is the fuel we're now using in all our engines. And this is why I like having so many people viewing the videos and giving me feedback. For years in my motorcycle racing career, whenever we take an engine apart, we never put it back together dry. We always wiped it with WD-40, wiped the parts to give it a micro-thin little coating of oil. Well, George has informed me that that's not a good idea, and obviously he's the guru when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now keep in mind the motorcycle engines, one of the things that's different is as soon as they were put together, you'd fire them up and that would probably burn right out. It wasn't really a problem, especially Yamahas, you'd do them right at the track. But the model engines, when they can sit for any length of time, the carrier can gum up the engine, so George asked me to please pass that on. And by the way, from now on, when I put the engine back together, I'm going to get myself they make a little tube, I've seen it in Home Depot, of air tool oil. He said that's really excellent for putting and assembling a motor when you have it apart. So See, it's little tips like that. If you could pick that up from George, George can pass it to me, to Steve, to Julia, to Banjock, to... Well, you know what? You save destroyed engines, you save hours of sanding, whatever. Sharing the tips through video is such a wonderful thing. What I do, and a lot of people look around and say, oh, your cans are so sloppy, oh, how can you work it? Well, they may be sloppy, they're sloppy because I use them all the time. I have a little bit of the filler left. This is from the original batch. See, I've got each can marked here. Silver filler. So what I can do now is I can put all these in one can, consolidate them, and that can be the silver that I'll use, and I probably won't need that much. I can empty the gun too. But always mark the can. Boy, how many people put stuff away they don't mark the can? What a mistake. Now we'll be ready to spray in about 2 minutes. Silver filler is a trip and a half. That is really a tip. That's something you'll probably want to try. And all you really need is, and I buy the cheapest baby powder you can buy. I've heard all kind of stories. You can't use this perfume powder and this. You know what? Buy this stuff on sale. You know, half the price, the store brand. Mix it right into the silver. Start with a smaller amount. Add a little more. Better to have 2 thin coats than 1 thick coat. I think once anybody uses that method, the silver shows you the mistakes, the talc fills them, and in 1 or 2 sandings, you get museum quality base coat. Now that's the thinnest coat of silver I have ever put on anything. I got about this last coat has about 70% thinner in it, and I'm pretty well satisfied that that's going to be the end of the silver on that. We're just going to let it sit up by the heating vent for a couple days and dry while we work on other projects in the shop. And that is really, really, when that dries out tomorrow, we'll get a weight on it. Hey, this morning Rich came over, and he's got a couple things. We want to pull the elevators off here. Now, see, this is a couple things. I want to put the horn in here differently. I want to put the little end grain pieces on the horn. But the first thing we want to do is get the horn attached here, and then we can fiberglass the middle. And then while that's drying, we can work back here. Now, Rich has been real smart about doing one thing. I'll give him full credit. Every time he gets to something that's a little bit, he's been watching tapes, needless to say. Anytime you get to something that you have a question about, come over before you do it. In this way, you don't have to rip it all apart and cut it apart and everything. Another thing, too, we're going to take 3/4 of an inch off each tip of the stab to make it 28 inches instead of 30. That kind of modernizes it a little bit from the old days when everybody made the tail 25%. That'll bring it down. Yeah, just take that right. Now, the first thing, before we put the horn on, I want to have that little part sanded smooth. Because if your seam has a hump, what happens when you sand it, you weaken the fiberglass right at the point it should be the strongest. So what we're trying to do, again, we're trying to put a lot of the stab technology on one tape. Always, no matter what, have some glass in the middle or double silk strand. But this way, if you have that center is smooth, but you don't want to make it thin. You don't want to sand any more than you have to. Just enough that you got a perfectly flat, smooth piece. And then we're going to sink the horn into the back of that. Next step is to undercut with a piece of wire with a radius on it, just so that you want to be the hinge line to be right in the middle. That looks like pretty close. You can always take a little more if you have to. And then we want to cut 2 little slots so he can sink the horn in. He's got the oversized bushing in here, so we'll have the slot built right in, right at the first flight of the plane. You'll have the slot right. Now you got to cut those 2 slots, Rich. Those 2 little slots. Measure them up, and just slot it with a sharp XL blade. Now, Rich put a little bit of Vaseline or any kind of grease on there so that now that the CA is on there and kicking, and keep moving it while the CA is kicking out. You don't want that to freeze up on the back. That's the reason I don't use that tubing anymore. Boy, you'd get 1/1,000,000th of a drop in there and it'd lock right up, and that was the end of that whole assembly. Oh, that looks good, Rich. Now we got a nice fillet of thick CA just to hold that on until we can put the carbon on. First time you're doing this, so we can expect a little, just take your time. You got plenty of time to do this. Mix 2 parts. Always use the epoxy. Big tip. The epoxy with 1 tube is twice the size of the other. We got plenty of time to mix it, just give it plenty of time. Set up with a little spatula, one of these little spatulas while Rich is mixing up the epoxy. A rag with some alcohol in case you want to get it off your fingertips or whatever. That'll be enough. I really did the other side. What I'm trying to do with Rich is I'm doing one side and I want him to do the other side so that he'll be able to help other people in the club and we can pass some of this information on. This is one of the key things if you're going to make foam wing airplanes. You got to, in some way, you got to know how to glass that middle of the wing. Wing, tail, flaps, edges of flaps. And then while this is drying, we're going to work on the edges of the elevators. A couple of things, always mix the epoxy 2 minutes longer than you think it. When you think it's mixed, mix it 2 minutes more. This is 2 to 1 and a 2 to 1 resin. I never ever use finishing resin. Finishing resin is formulated so that it's easy to sand. It's not as strong, not even close to being as strong on the bonding end as this. The stuff that bonds real well doesn't really sand that well, and that's the trade-off. We're looking for a good bond here. Exactly this piece in the middle of the wing is the parts that are really going to take a lot of, they're doing a lot of work every time you pull a corner. And what happens when you pull the elevators into full up or full down, you have created a piece of angle iron here, and where the angle iron ends is where usually most of the stress is, and where the center of the horn joint is. So we want to cover both of those. I want to go out far enough. I don't want to take any chances. This tail was 85.5 grams, so it's plenty well under the weight that we need to have. Just drag the spatula. Another thing too, another tip. The little spatulas that you buy from SIG or from Brodak, when you're going to do a job in this, use a brand new one, and then when you're done, use it for your other jobs around the shop. Because the first couple times you use it, it really does lay out real nice. Laying out nice, Rich?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay. Now, when you're done, just lay that piece of cloth out. Now, we're going to put a piece of cloth, and then we're going to put the equivalent of a 1-inch piece down the middle, and then a third piece, like a postage stamp, right in front of the crack where the horn ends, just to keep that crack from working its way forward. And when you're laying it out, yeah, that's good. Oh, you got the technique. Then, when you're going to put the spatula down, start at the middle and work your way out. And you always want the resin to go further out than where the cloth ends. And when you're sanding, the most important thing is just sand here and let the block just drift out. Don't sand from this side up where you're going to build a step. The sanding block should always be on the glass and just drifting out just a little. Otherwise you have to fill that gap with either paint or filler or tissue or whatever. Now when this tail gets tissued, this piece of tissue will go to here, this piece will come to here, so that the center will also, at the center maybe 2 inches, will be double tissued. Now if you break the middle of that tail, Rich, Gene Martin will come up and body slam you. And when you're all done with this and it's sanded out, it should have added between 1.5 grams and 2 grams, then you know you've done it right. 2 grams the most, gram and a half, if you really sand it out really nice. You got that little piece, and now the third piece is just that little piece we cut. And the reason is you got a stress riser right where that crack is in the horn, and if it were to start cracking, it would start right at the end. Just put it right at the end of that joint, and that'll be fine. And put a glob of the cloth, by the way, has Velon in it. Velon is a chemical treatment that they do so that the cloth tends to absorb the resin very quickly, like a sponge. Really works good too. And this is all 0.56 ounce cloth. When we're all done, that'll sand out. You won't even see the edge of the cloth. And the biggest other thing is medium silk span, where the joints overlap in the middle. Use the low setting, and now just start at the middle. Here you can see we've already done one side of it, but use the top of a can, use a bowl. We got those nice Midgley things. I don't know where I put them though. Midgley made these little Teflon cups to mix epoxy in. And I was cleaning out the shop yesterday. I don't even know where I put them. And just scrape off. There you go. You know, eventually, if you do it real meticulously, you'll get almost all the resin off. Okay, the next thing we wanted to confine these little tubes and end grain around the tube. Behind that, a 64th plywood doubler. And now he's going to put little caps on this that'll amount to be an angle for his fillets. So that'll be one thing less to do once he gets this done. By the way, these worked out really nice. Get the other one? He's still working away over here. He's not too good, but at least he's slow.
Got his little ray brother Winky John there and everything. Look at that. I'm telling you, what a guy.
All right, he's got his Brodak dope. He's ready to go make a mess out of things.
I'm ready to go Brodacking.
Okay, the next time we see this, you got all the tissue, that should be ready to put in silver the next time we see you.
Absolutely.
Well, my name isn't Rich Jackal. What I did, I joined up, I had to put a little splice because this is bigger than 3 inches, of course, according to the plans. Put a center line on the part that's going to have the hinges. I'm going to try to rough out the flaps today anyway. Now the idea of this is I can try to get some of the finish, get these fit into the main frame, and then what I can do is start the finish on this. So this is starting to dry while I assemble a tail onto the aeroplane and do some of the other work on the fuselage. Always trying to have something drying while I'm working on something else. But I'll take a brand new XL26 blade, carve down to the tape, and try to taper it equal from both sides. Again, this is just a little bit of hand work. See, we started with a relatively nice piece of wood, so if I can get the taper in there the way I want, this should be we're shooting for a 1/2 ounce. When we're all done, these usually come out a 1/2 ounce each. Ways to do this, but the tape method seems to work pretty well for me, and I try to take, I know I'm going to hit that glue seam pretty soon, take some very, very thin shavings. I want to get almost up to the tape on both sides, and the rest I'll do with the sanding block. Now, because we've made other Spitfires, we know pretty rough ideas what bits and pieces should weigh. The wing is not really appropriate because we have the body already attached to it, so we weren't able to really do that, but we know we've had good luck making 1/2 ounce flaps. But once this is carved and sanded, I'm guessing, if it's a lot more than a 1/2 ounce, somebody out there gets a free flap, but realistically you can shoot for this size flap being a 1/2. I just try to get all the high spots off before I start. And most of this I do with the sanding block. You just gotta watch when you go into that glue seam. Because we have that glue seam there, it really is difficult to get a nice clean cut up in that area. Again, the trick here is not to let the knife bite, just to take little ice shavings off. Because you're going to do really all the final work with a sanding block on a piece of flat glass. And luckily we have that nice piece of glass. The sandpaper glued right down to it. But if you can get a lot of it off this way, just makes breathing the dust in a lot less too. And needless to say, first choice would be to start with sea-grain wood, but obviously if you don't have any, second choice is a piece of wood that's real straight. Now what's nice about this system is the glass is heavy enough to stay in place, and the sandpaper kind of holds the flap in one position rather than having it in your knee or on something slippery. So usually just a minimum of pressure will hold it down while you do the final shaping with a sanding block. This is where the sticky back paper really worth its weight in gold. And it doesn't take long, and you can just give it a flip to both sides in a relatively short amount of time.
will just take the knife marks right out in a very, very short amount of time. Now, as I get to the edge, because it's an elliptical shape, I want to have that edge tapered, and I'll put a final center line on by pen, and then work my way towards the center line to get it a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch. I want that real aerodynamic point down at the end.
The final shaping, we get it right up to the center line. I like to leave that a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch and then just radius it off as the last step.
Rough idea of if we're in the right weight. $14 would be certainly okay at this point. We're at 11.5, so this obviously is a real nice piece of wood. 11.5 before carving the hinge line.
Now, very similar, or exactly similar to the tail. I want to lay out the hinge line and put not the notches, but just the angles on here, and then I want to fit up the little tubes in the end that'll go to the horn. Again, this work is really kind of redundant. Once you get a technique that works well for you, then it's, from that point on, you're pretty well home free will. And that pretty much gives us the angle that I can carve down to the center line to there. Repeat the same thing on the other side, of course. Okay, now the thing is to get the 26 blade and just trim this right down. Now it's nice if you can use the edge of a glass table to do this and just lay it down. Well, you can even use one of those planes that takes a little slice off at a time. Well, once you pull this tape up, after the carving is done, I don't want to put a dent in it. You should have a really nice edge, and we've done this over and over again, but always a good reminder for people, new people coming into the tape subscription program, to see how we do this. It's not really a well-kept secret, but get that edge, and now we're ready to put aluminum tubes in here so that we can slide the flaps on and off. Step is I cut a little piece of, this is aluminum tubing, scuffed it up. And this fits right over the 1/8 inch horn. Now what I need to do is up in the front of it is notch this back just a little bit so that this slides a little bit further up on the horn. I do that with the Dremel tool. And the last little bit of this, I just need to get this down.
Walking, aerobics, and cross training. The new Nike Air Huarache, Air Elite Max, and Air Cross Trainer Low. Lady Foot Locker has them. And at Lady Foot Locker, you'll get respect, expertise, and understanding. Because Lady Foot Locker is the only
I'm going to chamfer these edges.
store designed exclusively for women. So come on down and see the latest in Nike shoes and apparel at Lady Foot Locker. Just do it. Mo, have you been a good boy this year?
I don't give any complaints, you know what I mean?
Good. Ask Santa for a brain.
Little notch. What that does, that just lets it slide up a little further onto the horn, gives it a little more support. And just let it stick out about 1/8 of an inch past where the horn ends. Without saying, what we did is put the heavier of the two flaps on the outside. This is the lighter one. And what I want to check that I have is a nice accurate fit. Everything looks pretty good. And I want to make a little mark on this, maybe 1/8 of an inch past where the aluminum tube would end, because I need to channel this out so that while this tube is actually in place, I can slide the flap on and then tack it with some CA. The reason for that is even if this angle is off by 1 degree, I'll make up for it with this. This will set that tube in place. Once the tack glue dries, I can slide it off. Even if that's not a perfect 90 or if it's distorted, when I put this on, I won't have the flap in tension one way or the other. It'll be nice and free that way. So the next step is just channel this out. What is using, let's see if we can just lay this out, piece of 1/8 inch tape, same Dremel bit end, and just lay this out. Just want to give myself a little guideline here. The bit that seems to work the best for getting that notch in there. Once that's done a little bit oversized, what I have is a piece of 1/8 inch wire with some of that sticky back paper, and I'll do the last little bit. I want a tight fit, but not a fit that's going to put some distortion in this. I want to be able to slide the flaps right on and off with no resistance at all. First we really need to know if this is going to fit. I have just a little bit of slop so I can fine tune that in. Let me get my clearance set out at the tip a little bit. Okay, now I know the next thing I want to do is just put 1 drop of slow dry NCA in there and let that just tack in place. If I do that, tacking it in position, I want to harden up the wood on the whole edge. Just let the thin CA soak in there. Kick off naturally. Once that kicks off, that whole edge of the wood will be nice and hard. Then I can put some slow CA in there and just get this tacked in, get it jiggled right into position for the final little set on getting that tube put in position. Tube just tacked in there. I can make this a kind of semi-permanent joint and then get a little look at how easy this is going to slide on and off. President Nixon. If I make this a totally permanent joint, the key thing here is I want to be able to slide this on with no slop and no tension as it goes on and off. That looks like it'll be fine. I want to get, this is a piece of 64th plywood with the grain going the long way. Put a nice puddle of thin CA on there. Real important that the grain go front to back. We're trying to make a rib out of this. Once that kicks off, I'm going to trim that off with a scissor and the final little bit grind with a Dremel sanding drum. Just let that kick off normally. We account for that little C-shaped relief in here so that the bend in the wire. Don't forget these horns have a radius. If they have too sharp of a bend, they're prone to snap. There's plenty of a radius on these 1/8 inch horns. That same little bit just gives me a little bit of a relief. Now I can take the rest of this, just using a Dremel sanding drum, just clean that edge right off, blend it right in. I want to radius everything. Now, the next step on this is I want to put thin CA for about 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch. So I want to soak this whole edge of the wood, both sides of the edge here before I do a final sanding, and this tip, so that I have the wood as hard as it possibly can get from the thin CA, and then I'll blend that right back down. Little tips that I've put on virtually all my videos that most people really at every skill level say, wow, I never thought of that, is hardening up the wood with the thin CA. And in this case, I want to have a band here of really hard, stiff wood. Let it soak in. Now, if you don't wipe it off, you're going to have a big job sanding it off, and then you get the wood all uneven. But if you go real quick with a paper towel, you'll find out you've got the best of all worlds. You don't have to sand it much, very little. Let it kick. The dust in the paper towel is what makes it kick. And I'll do the same thing on the flap edges. Any edge that you think is going to be vulnerable, count to maybe 5. Don't hold it in one place or it'll stick. Now even the 64th plywood here, it hardens that. It's amazing. Take a piece and do your own little test. Take a piece that isn't hardened and a piece that is. You'll see it's just triples the strength of the wood. Now the edge of the flap, the easiest way I know to do this is just let it drip down the edge. Again, give it about 5 seconds to kick in. You can go back and sand this, do it over, sand it, do it over as many times as you want, but you'll have that edge will be hard as a razor then. Edge, you can always do one of two things. You can put a 64th plywood edge on it if you really think it's going to take a beating, or just harden the wood up with thin CA. Now if we were to sand too much off and have too big of a clearance in here in the final fit, I'll put a cap of 64th plywood on it, or on both sides. From time to time, some of the CA will drip down into the little aluminum tube. Never, never, never take it to a drill press, put an 1/8 inch drill and just try to drill it out. Take a drill by hand. In this case, I haven't had that problem yet, so take an 1/8 inch drill just to give you a little simulation here. Get one of my bits. Take an 1/8 inch drill and just work it in barehanded, or put a pair of vice grips on it very slowly, and you'll find out you can cut the CA out without making the tube have excessive clearance. What happens, even if you don't destroy the flap and it catches and breaks off, what can happen is you put so much clearance in the tube that the flaps are going to have play, and you don't want any play. Between the flaps back and forth, you want no play at all. Now with the flaps just sitting there, I like to check that all the little angles and edges and everything line up nice. In this case, it looks like it's pretty decent. Now what's happening now is it's starting to look like a Spitfire from this point in time on. And this is what we've been striving for, is that elliptical wing. This is the part of it. It's starting to become an aeroplane now. The hinge pockets get cut similar to the way we've done it previously. Nothing special there. We're coming up on the end of this tape, and I'm glad that we got to this point in time anyway. At this point in time, it really starts to look like an aeroplane. It starts to get exciting to work on it. It's just not a bunch of parts anymore sitting on a table. It's really starting to have that, I don't know what it is, that Spitfire look, the look of that elliptical wing. So the only thing I think we're going to have time for here is, well, day is coming up in the end. I'm going to cut the hinge pockets in, cut the hinge slots, and then we'll probably call it quits for the end of this day. Just lined up, try to lay out the hinges symmetrically, hinge, pocket, using that tool that we have. They'll gut out just the same, exactly the same as we did on the stab and elevators. And again, if you don't have one of these tools, it's a real easy thing to make. Plywood, the thickness of the hinge, sticky back sandpaper. What you can see is it goes very nice and neat for making hinge pockets. Yeah, the reason I use so many hinges, that's one of the questions I always hear. Why do you use so many hinges? Well, I like the look of like a toothed edge. It's strictly for looks. If you really were looking to make an ultra-light plane, leave out every other hinge. I would say the minimum would be 5 a flap, 3 on an elevator, but I kind of like this sawtooth look, and then once the hinges are dyed, I think that just sets it apart a little bit. Now these, because we don't have a real convenient way of jigging up the ring, I'm going to cut the hinge slots by hand, not try to take a chance on with all that tissue paper there. I want to maintain a soft surface, and that's just not a good way to do it, so I think I'll just cut them by hand if I can, or think of some better way to do it in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Doing them by hand is a little less accurate, but in this case, this lightweight little battery-powered guy seems to work pretty well. It's going to be a little more awkward cutting those slots in the trailing edge, I know that. I must have figured some way of doing that. By the way, good little tool for about 35 bucks. Really finding more and more uses for it.
We're right at the end of this tape, by the way. I don't want to run out of tape in the middle of doing something, but I want to transpose those slots now down into the trailing edge and figure some way that's going to be convenient to hold this while I make those slots.
Now, I tried a couple different ways, and I think I just want to show this way on it. This is the only way that really works reasonably. What I try to do is support my hand on the edge of the table somewhat, and like an artist would, always use your fingertip to do the supporting. The hinge slotting tools is they always leave a little puffy area around the hinge. This way you're actually removing wood. You have a better chance of getting a nice look on the finish on top of the hinge.
Okay, I hope you picked up some good tips off this video, and please, as always, share it with your friends. This is the point in time when, hey, he really starts to become a Spitfire. On our next tape, we'll finish up the flaps. Assemble, I hope we'll get time to assemble a whole plane, work on a canopy mold, who knows what. So many things to do here and other little shop projects. And I know just by watching the tapes, I know you can add things to them. Please send in any ideas you have, and be glad to put them on tape for you. It's the point in time when it really starts to look like an airplane. Really little parts are starting to come together. Starting to really get excited about seeing this in one piece. Probably in a week or two, 2 weeks, we'll have it in one piece. Start to finish off the fuselage. We're working on another new mold. We need 3 molds altogether. We have 2 done for our carbon fiber gear. That'll be coming probably in a couple of weeks. And it really is starting to become a Spitfire. Starting our big O-gauge layout soon. I hope within a month or two we'll be starting a big O-gauge layout up on the 3rd floor. Brand new pipe from George Aldrich. Has a bigger stinger on the back. We've already made a modification to put that little angle piece on there, but back end is opened up more. It'll be interesting and exciting testing this. We have 2 other pipes to test. The only problem, obviously, there's no weather left. And there's always a good stock of Brodack dope. More of this to be tested soon. Props to work on from Dennis with the reflex airflow. We'll be working on those soon. There's a lot of stuff coming. It's just been this is the busiest winter I've ever had in the shop. We're doing a molded canopy for Dan Banjock real soon. Making the rubber mold, making the plug, having Midgley mold them up. Add to our supply of molded parts we can supply. Another brand new exhaust manifold. I don't know exactly which one. We have 3 or 4 choices. The Siamese one or the individual one. A lot of choices. There'll be a lot of cool stuff happening soon. Keep trying to decide which exhaust manifold I want to use on this model since it's an early spit. It's all coming. And this is the last couple of days we're going to have our tree up. So every day when I come up and have my coffee, I run the trains for a little while. Enjoy the tree. Our Christmas season's almost over, and we're ready to get going on 1999. I hope you'll be joining us every step of the way. Another thing I've been considering these early style roundels with the wide yellow band just to spruce the plane up a little bit.
lot of decisions to make.
We're going to make an update to the canopy mold, the original Spitfire canopy mold, to include the bulletproof glass. And that Spitfire one is so nice. And with the two different size kinds of roundels. Thanks for sharing our Christmas with us. It was a good one.
Yeah, see you on the next tape.
When the summer comes rolling, baby, I wanna leave you. Baby, I believe it.